I think psychological safety plays a big role. And actually, if I may touch on it, especially for the women that might be listening to this or watching this afterwards, I think it's sort of...
Hello and welcome to another episode of TTalks, where we dive into the stories behind the leaders shaping our world. I'm your host, TJ Walia, and today we're joined by another exceptional guest, Noureen Syed, a leader in data and AI at IBM Consulting. Noreen has an extensive background in the tech industry, having held pivotal roles at both Microsoft and IBM, where she has been instrumental driving the adoption of AI, analytics, and emerging technologies. Her journey from her early days at AMD to her current role at IBM is not just about technological innovation, but also about the impactful transformations in customer service and business value. Noreen, welcome to TTalks.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, TJ.
It's an absolute pleasure. Noreen, just a quick intro about yourself for our audience. I've gone through a slew of things that you've kind of accomplished and gone through, but we'd love to hear what your journey looks like from yourself.
For sure. Thank you again for having me. I guess I could say by trade, I'm an engineer. So I did computer engineering from University of Waterloo, and that shapes a lot of my thinking and interactions today. So that hasn't gone out of my DNA. I'm a mommy to an 8-year-old, and so that brings a lot of anticipation and fun skills as a parent that you kind of utilize in the business world as well. And then I really do really thoroughly, I think at the core, enjoy serving and helping people and helping customers and clients, and that's sort of the core of my DNA, I'd say.
I love that, and I think having worked with you directly in many capacities, I would say that statement is bang on. Like, you've gone out of your way to help those around you, help them build up, including myself at times. I know I've come to you, knocked on your door and said, Noreen, we got to talk, right? So I've had those moments. So to get here, Noreen, to see where you are today, one of the things that I've seen in my career is that we all have this pivotal moment, this moment that we can reflect back on and say, that was that key defining moment. If I had made a different decision then, maybe things wouldn't have been the same way as they are today. Do you have that moment that you can share with us?
That resonates, TJ. And I think if I reflect back, there were, about 5-6 roles I've done in my journey and life at Microsoft Canada. For the past year, I've been at IBM Canada. And there's this one particular role, I think, early on in my career after the new grad role that I'd taken on, that really sounds like that pivotal moment that you're talking about. And the reason is I went in from a client-facing role to a program management role. And what I realized that helped me really understand to the core is a lot of the business metrics, decisions, what makes the businesses turn, what's required for scale, growth, like terms that we take for granted sometimes when we're in our swim lanes, just kind of focusing on the day-to-day. And rightly so, when you're serving a customer, the only thing that should be on your mind is this customer and their priorities. But in order to scale that across multiple customers and not just help one person, but many, that programmatic role really helped me kind of understand a lot of the boring business stuff too, probably like what is a P&L and profit and loss and how do things work and what ideas are great and what ideas are not so great, how are people decisions made. But I think it's really been pivotal in getting me to where I am today.
Yeah, it's there's opportunities that we can grasp and they just redefine who we are, right? Something we don't even imagine, something we don't even think about. And I've talked to many individuals who have gone to school for one thing and they don't know how they end up where they did, but they did. And when you look back and you can start connecting the dots and understand exactly where those moments came from. So
I think that's actually great. If I stop you there quickly, there's one really great point in there that you brought up, and it's having gone to school for engineering. But I think via this role, what I realized is the combination of technical plus business is really powerful. And so for all the technical folks out there, as soon as you figure out that EQ part on how to work with others and get work done, things just set into place in a whole different way. And I think that's key.
Absolutely. And a lot of people don't know is that I went to school for computer science, and I was one of the individuals who used to code other people's projects and help them out. Like, I loved it so much. But when I got the opportunity at Microsoft, I was still second year university, it changed. And in my professional life, I don't think I've coded for a day. And even though I loved it that much, that pivot really, took me down another trajectory, which I absolutely loved even more. And you kind of embrace it and you accept it. And that's, I think, the key. A lot of us hesitate in saying, this is out of my normal comfort, day-to-day things that I do. I don't know what this is going to do. But those I feel, and from all the guests that I've talked to and interviewed, are the ones that are the make it or break it moments, right? They kind of take you down a whole different trajectory. You learn and develop yourself in so many different aspects that you've never even imagined. And,
Sure.
the P&L terms that you're talking about that you've never come across before, and all of a sudden these are your daily vocabulary. It's a big transformation that happens.
For sure.
To get there, and I kind of touched on it a little bit, but the decision-making aspect of it, right? It's in leadership, in our day-to-day, it becomes critical in terms of how we navigate, our personal lives, but even our careers. What do you anchor towards, or how do you make tough decisions when these situations arise?
For sure. And I'd say the decision making has been evolving over time. So how I probably speak to it is not how I would have spoken to it 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And so maybe I can help people walk through. Like my approach earlier on in life was very much fail fast. Just try it. What's the worst that can happen? But not in a reckless way, right? I'd say think through exactly that question, what's the worst that can happen? And in my mind, kind of list out, well, what is the worst that can happen? Someone can say no, I can go up and try it and miserably fail, probably get some feedback, be embarrassed, kind of going through the emotional and the programmatic side of it. The other piece is then I heard this a couple of years ago at a conference, which stuck with me, which was when you don't know what other information you're looking for in order to make that decision, go ahead and make the decision because you're just fishing for something at that point. And that really started sticking with me as well. And the last one I'd say is I hate wasted energy. I don't like wasting time and churning and overthinking because you can always play devil's advocate like 5 million times. So at some point in time, you've got to make the call and let's just plow in and see what happens.
Yeah, that's great advice there. And I think there's one thing I'll probably touch on. I mean, you had an exceptional career at Microsoft with almost 16 years with your tenure there. And I think the culture and the organization that we represent also has an impact as well. So Microsoft was a very open culture where it allowed you to fail in certain aspects and learn from your mistakes and develop. And Satya always says this as well, as be a learn it all, not a know it all, right? So those aspects are great. But I think there are some organizations where you don't have that ability and you don't have that flexibility, and it is frowned upon. So the decision making sometimes, I want our listeners to understand that it varies, and you need to understand your environments and what your culture in your organizations allows for before you come in a situation where you're like, well, Noreen and TJ said I can do this, and then I got fired. So that's not what we want to do. But the idea is you're going to have to make decisions, and tough decisions at times, but take that accountability, take that step and own up, right? To that decision. When we start blaming others, it starts having an impact that, you're not really a leader in that aspect, and you're not owning up to whatever decision you're making. And sometimes you'll start even hesitating in making those decisions.
Absolutely. I think psychological safety plays a big role. And actually, if I may touch on it, especially for the women that might be listening to this or watching this afterwards, I think it's sort of core in our DNA. And so that's why I have to emphasize that part of my personality a little bit. Let's try it. What's the worst? Because women tend to be more shy about taking a chance first, or especially in the career world, right? Or, should I go out and try it? What if I go present? What if I put this idea forward? Will it be represented? Will it be acknowledged? Sometimes they put out the idea, but their voice is not heard. And another person, of a different gender kind of puts out that idea and it's heard all of a sudden. So those things, unfortunately, over time have led us to believe that maybe we should just kind of stay quiet or not mention or not try and attempt this. So absolutely, it takes practice. Try it in settings that are comfortable. Start small, and then you build up, and until you practice, you really kind of build up your confidence. So that's great to call out.
Yeah. That's phenomenal advice, and I think I want to dig into that a little bit more as well, if I may. Given being a female leader, and then add to that being in the tech space, right? So I remember we used to go to the conferences, and you have 20, 30,000 people there, but not that many female leaders or females that you can actually look at and point at. So you guys were the odd ones out, essentially. That resilience for you to go up against that in a male-dominated industry, and to show up and then do what you did and then become a leader in the same segment as well. please share some insights on that journey, because I'd love for our listeners to get some context there.
I think if I may use like a funny analogy, like someone asked the Hulk, how do you stay so calm? And I think he kind of responds in the movies like, well, I'm always angry. And it's sort of a similar mindset. I actually never paid attention to the fact that I'm a minority or I'm a small number. Obviously, you notice it, but it's something I intentionally actually chose to ignore. So the energy focused on ignoring and just being myself and bringing my best to the table, trying to focus on the skills, and sometimes actually letting, unfortunately, things roll off the back and go, okay, I'm just going to ignore that comment for a second. So it took work to ignore it. But I chose that mindset because I thought focusing in on the energy of I am a minority is not constructive. Like, so what? So really what? I don't want to focus on embellishing my skills. And does that mean that I have to work extra hard? No, because I'm now putting myself in, it's a safe space and I'm allowed to bring my voice, my ideas, my approaches, just the same as anybody else at the table. And so really it's going back to like, don't waste time or dwell in wasted energy, but really try to kind of focus on the constructive work and skills and habits that you can build to continue improving and stepping through the hurdles that you're going to get in your careers. And I'd say that actually worked really well in the earlier part of the career. When I flipped into a leadership mode and got into hiring, I did have to be a bit more conscious of it. So I'll at the same time say you cannot be oblivious to it, especially in a leadership position, to it always. Why? What changed? I had to now do hiring. I had to be conscious of what's needed to hire a woman versus a man, or versus anybody that might be identifying with different gender roles. So I had to be more conscious of these things because now I had to do the reach out and make them comfortable and cater to that audience and provide a work environment that catered to a wider array of talent. So it did switch somewhere.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. Is there, and maybe if you can help elaborate a little bit on that as well, in terms of for the females who are trying to get into the get their career to the next stage, or whether it's that promotion or that next job that they're looking for, what is it that you're looking for? And is there anything different that you're looking for between a male applicant and a female applicant? I'd love to understand that perspective and share that with our audience.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing there for the ladies, I would say, is, and I've heard it in conferences, there's been research on it, I don't have anything to kind of quote, but I've also then, amongst talking to family and friends and colleagues, heard it time after time. Like, we're just talking about a new role that comes up. Why don't you go for it? I don't really have enough of the skills that it's requiring. I don't think I have the right experience. And while that's a very logical, sound way to think about it, I think the way I encourage them to think, and I kind of use myself as the example, is, well, think about it this way. If you knew 70 or 80% of the job, would you really find it interesting? Because wouldn't it really be what you already know? It wouldn't be challenging. You'd just be coasting by getting into it and you wouldn't be challenged enough. So if you know only 30 to 40%, and by the way, that's what recruiters look for as well. They're not looking at somebody that matches 100% of the 5 bullet points they've got out there in required skills, right? But as long as someone shows ability to be adaptable, ability to pick up, shows, they can move with sort of changes, and then has some of the core required skills, like maybe 30, 40% of them, that's a position you should apply for. So my number one advice to the women out there, put your name in the hat, because it's not going to get picked if it's not even in the hat. So start doing that in a reasonable way. As long as you have the 30 to 40% of the skills, start applying. That's the biggest thing I'd say, because anytime I'm looking at pipelines, I'm sitting down with HR to hire, my biggest disappointment is not enough women have applied.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because it reminds me of a little bit of my story as well. And I'll share that really quickly, because I was in a technical account management type of role, and I made a switch right into the marketing organization, which was, from service delivery to marketing was a huge, gap that I had to overcome. And there were a lot of rejections along the way. There were a lot of questions like, why do you want to come into this side of the business? What are you trying to accomplish here? What are you trying to do? And the gap was so significant, but I was persistent about what I wanted to do and why I wanted to do it. I understood that this is a skill I wanted to build and develop in. And I was persistent in knocking on those doors and saying, hey, listen, like, I know this might be not the right opportunity or right time, but this is what I'm capable of doing. And this is how far I'll stretch myself to go learn. Mm-hmm. And when I started applying all of that, and that visibility allowed me to actually get that role eventually. And things like that do take time, but you have to be persistent and not give up. Rejections are just, another opportunity for feedback is how I look at it. As in, if you ask for that feedback, and then you go develop on it.
Yeah.
When I first started at Microsoft, funny enough, I was told I didn't have enough sales experience because I was still in university, just graduating out of university. And I went back and I went to the hiring manager and said, what do you need? What skills are you looking for? And then I identified the companies that would give me those skills. I went there, spent about a year and a half, 2 years, knocked back on the doors and said, guys, I'm ready. And I got in, right? So it's about being deliberate about what your strategy is and planning, and then believing in yourself that you're capable of doing it. But to your point, if you know 80 to 90% of that role, you really want to do it.
Yeah, I agree. No, I love that.
No, that's great. I'd love to, pick your brain. We're talking about, having the mental strength and the resiliency, mental health. It's a topic that I've been very, very close to, and it's something that I promote in terms of my own well-being, but for everyone else, that they should be really prioritizing it. Given my experiences that I've dealt with burnout and exhaustion at work. So, what's your strategies on how do you prioritize yourself and your teams when it relates to mental health?
For sure. Yeah, maybe I'll start off a little bit with, because I think when people look at LinkedIn or they just see the career progression and they're like, well, she must have just got it all figured out. And maybe I'll start a little counterintuitively, which is, no, I have bad days. I have overwhelming days. I get tired. There are days sometimes where the sleep starts cutting in. And it starts regressing is the word I'm going to use from what I would consider a healthy balance. And when that happens, I have to pause and reset because I know I'm going down a slide that I don't want to, and it's not going to be productive. And it starts to show up. And so like little subtle signs, I'll write an email and I know I wrote it too fast or I miswrote it and I'll start having more typos. I will just not be able to come up with the idea or the strategy. And then personally, I'll start being short with my child, right? So it starts to bleed in both places. And really, those are those pause moments. So the balance, it's forever going. There are times that kind of get worse. So on a personal level, I try to kind of model it. When I take vacation, I won't respond to emails to my colleagues or my direct reports and expect the same back in return. There's no way I'm going to ping them or expect it. Weekends, we try to take weekends. In addition, I think as managers and leaders, we have to not only model, but create these safe moments and intentionality around those breaks. So whether it's, frequent reminders to all the managers and then their direct reports to say, hey, holidays are coming. We've gone a quarter way through the fiscal. Have you taken enough vacation? Have you booked your vacation? They seem like very simple, common sense type of tasks. But it's surprising the number of times when you ask or prompt the team that they see that as the permission to go ahead and then book their vacation. And there's many people that are great and on top of that, and there's others that need help. And it's not that they don't care about themselves, but they're actually really equally passionate about their work and they get lost in the work. And then you can start to see that they're going to burn out. So sometimes you have to look out for the team. Other times you have to entrust and empower them to take care and overall model the behavior that you expect out of them as well. Because you can't say, please take your vacations, take your breaks, and then be sending out 5 million emails on the weekend to them, right?
Absolutely. And so leading by example, it's so important and critical. And I'm going to share something I've shared, on some of my other episodes as well, is one of the leaders that I absolutely admire and respect. He's a CIO, and what he does is, in his signature, he basically has a little disclaimer that says, my working hours or your working hours may not be my working hours, right? So respond to this email when it's, well suited for you and under your conditions, as opposed to, because an email is coming in from a leader, you have to respond to it now. And that's what people feel obligated, right? My boss just sent me an email. Do I need to respond now? Do I not? And it adds on to that anxiety. But a little statement like that really alleviates all that. It just helps you be a little bit more calm and say, you know what, maybe I can get back to this later on. And usually the way I look at it as, if it's absolutely urgent, it's probably a phone call that you're getting and not an email, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. The balance between like what's an IM versus an email versus an actual phone call. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Very cool. The next aspect, and it might tie back into some of your career journey and some of the advice and career advice that you've been sharing, mentorship, right? It can be transformative if used the right way. There's a lot of folks that I've seen that kind of tap into it, while there are others that have very formalized relationships. And I've seen some individuals who've had OneNotes that are detailed with, I met on this day, we talked about this, we talked about, Where do you stand in that? What does that look like from a mentorship perspective, and what kind of impact has it had in your career journey?
For sure. I'd say mentorship for me, some point in time, first of all, monumental. Like all the mentors, if they're watching this, I hope they can see the amount of things I've retained and I keep kind of using as framework and how I operate today. And somewhere then it switched to also me getting reverse mentorship from mentees that I started mentoring. But I think the key element really is a lot of the mentors have kind of helped one either help me see things that I wasn't seeing about myself as a positive skill set or an area to explore career wise. And I'm talking, they're still mentors, so they're only answering and taking on the mentorship as I'm inquiring and asking. So it takes two to tango. You really have to, when you go into mentorship, it's not a person that's always teaching you. They're just kind of showing things, but you have to go in like, hey, I'm here to see blinders, or am I thinking about this the right way? So you have to ask the right questions as well. And so some mentors are more progressive, and especially if they happen to be your manager, then they're kind of playing more of a broader role than mentorship. So it's the combination that has really helped me out. But why it's been pivotal is many of the times I think there's hesitance, right, as we're trying on a new role. And there's this one key moment. I remember a particular mentor manager who really helped me out with a key message on how to speak to executives and how to influence. And she said, and again, this is a thing women do, but we tend to explain all our points and then get to the punchline. She's like, start with the punchline and then don't just pause there. Don't even go into the explanation. Let the questions flow, let the interest create before you start explaining your thought process if it's necessary, but say the punchline with confidence. And that has changed the way forever how I present and speak. And I love that single piece of advice.
Yeah, I love that. It reminds me of well, you at least got the advice to do it. I learned it the hard way. I remember there was an executive that I was meeting early in my career at Microsoft, and when I say early, we used to have PowerPoints printed on paper that we used to take. And if you remember
That's
those
ancient.
days, yes. And I walked into a meeting with the CIO, and I handed him this stack of like probably 20 slides, 25 slides. And he throws it back at me on the table. He slides it back because I don't want to see this. He goes, tell me the two slides that are important on this thing. And that was the most valuable lesson that I learned from that day, which I've kept with me ever since. It's like, we don't need all that, that backstory. And if they ask for it, great. Let's bring that to them. But let's get right to the meat of it and give them the information they need. So it's amazing you got that advice, but I learned the hard way.
Nice.
All right. So the next area I want to touch on is productivity strategies, Noreen, for you. There's, with the types of roles that we carry, you've got, a little one at home. There's a lot of things that you have to balance. How do you stay, productive? What are you top of mind when you're trying to get something done? Is like, okay, this is my number one strategy. What does that look like?
For sure. And it's funny enough, productivity is sort of a byproduct of getting other things in check, such as the mental health and work-life balance. And the reason I weave that in is, for instance, if I'm first of all going intentionally with, I'm going to have flex hours or flex working style, I have to know the pros and cons of that. Yes, it allows me a lot of flexibility, but my work kind of breaks throughout the day as I go off and run, do whatever I need to. And so I speak for people that might do that. And so do I do that regularly? No, I tend to kind of stick to a core set of working hours. And really, I might have a couple of days or weeks or certain periods in life because of something going on a personal level where I switch into a flex mode. But outside of that, I kind of keep core working hours. I prioritize sleep. I do make use of technology in terms of turning off my phone notifications to not get work IMs after 7 p.m. in the evening, and I won't check them before 7 a.m. Again, to your point, if someone really needs me, they're going to phone call me after that period. But I'm definitely not sitting there and checking emails and messages actively, unless again it's that sporadic time before a client deliverable or a meeting where I know this week is going to be that week where I will need to kind of do odd hours. And I'm very conscious of that too. I reflect back frequently, monthly, to see, is that odd time happening every week? Because then it's not so odd and rare anymore. And in fact, it's just become my regular. So kind of keeping those checks and balances. Outside of that, I'm an extrovert. And so it's easy to get, like you, distracted and go out and talk to people. So I try to block off focus time on my calendar. I think a couple of years ago at Microsoft, you were delivering your focus focusing workshop, and it's all about like, I kind of utilize that using focused email versus other email, and sort of the system of how to filter. Like I know search is amazing now and you can search for anything, but all of those things kind of really help me stay on top. And one of the pivotal things I actually picked up from your training was, I think I used to get anxiety when I had unread emails, but I've learned to like just now let emails pile on and they're kind of going through the system and filtering. And I no longer look at the unread number to create my reactions, but rather like I'll just get through the system whether it's the time I check, the folder I check, or how I file away or action it. Those are the ways to handle it versus focusing on the unread number. And so that was life-changing as well.
That's awesome. It's an honor to know that you're still using my teachings from so many years ago. So I'll do a shameless plug here that, I've basically built that training. But to your point, I built that training to eliminate my own anxiety. When I hit burnout, I couldn't keep up with all of this. And literally my inbox caused me to be anxious. And I always thought I was behind. But now letting those emails pile up, like the training is called Inbox Zero, but the idea is not to be at zero. It's really to have control. And when you have an understanding of what's in your inbox, you can let the stuff pile up, the one that's not important. The stuff that's important and critical, is as long as you can see it and action it, you're good, right? That's kind of where the basis of that training was. But I'm so glad you've been using that to this point on. All right, so Noreen, we're going to change up gears a little bit. It's our time for our rapid fire segment. Okay. So the rules are simple. I'm going to ask a question, and you're going to respond with the first thing that comes to mind. You're like, all geared up for this. I can see you tying your hair back, everything. All right. Are you ready to go?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. Tea or coffee?
Tea.
Okay. Favorite food?
Chocolate, dark chocolate.
Yes, I do remember dark chocolate with you, actually. That's I didn't realize it was one of the favorites.
I don't know if it feels as food, but I take it.
It's food. It's food. I'll qualify it as food. Your wake up time?
Some days like 8 a.m.
Okay.
If I've had a late night, and other days like 6 a.m.
Okay. Yeah. So it depends on the day.
Yes.
One gadget that you cannot live without?
Phone, definitely. It's that thing sucks my life, but is also my life.
It sucks all of our lives, yes. And most surprising application of AI you've encountered so far?
That's a good one, because there's so many rushing into my head. I think simply just the prompt reminders. It's the simple stuff. Like, did you forget to do this or email this person this? So it's the built-in like friendly reminder prompts. I find them helpful. And they don't look like they're nagging me, and it's not like I'm answering back to them and going, yes, I did it. God damn it, stop reminding me. But it is those reminders, because oftentimes it's actually catching a few things that I've missed.
Awesome. Last thing you touch before going to bed?
A book, generally, and something very light. Actually, a book with my child. So it's a children's book, not a business read.
Not like a AI analytics.
No, none of those behind me.
Okay.
So a children's book, and we have a great laugh, and we just take a kid's lesson to bed. Awesome.
I've actually transformed from the books to ChatGPT. So we actually have ChatGPT create the story, and it's relevant to what the child wants. So my 10-year-old wants Mario stories, so it creates Mario stories for us, which is amazing. So
That's
no more
great.
book. Yeah. And one word to describe the future of AI.
Exciting.
Okay. And my last question: if animals could talk, which would you want to chat with?
My cat, Milo. He seems to have it all figured out. I really want to know what he's up to.
They're so confident. I had a cat for a short period of time until my wife and my other daughter got allergic to them. But they're brilliant. I was so impressed. I thought dogs were smart, but dogs act or show that they're smart because they want to impress you. Cats don't care.
Yeah, except they bring out the smarts when they want to, and it's like, yes. I have it in me, but you got to get it out.
Exactly. Noreen, thank you very much for sharing your valuable insights and experiences with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you.
Thank you, TJ. Very appreciated.
Thank you, Noreen, for sharing your valuable insights and experiences with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe for TTalks for more conversations with the leaders who are shaping our future. Until next time, keep on inspiring.